It's so nice to be here and feel like I'm with my people. I was going to start this off totally different, but now I'm like, you know what? This feels so like a gathering of friends that I figured just accept the honest experience of what it feels like. And I do want to say thank you. Thanks for having me, Folger Library and Shakespeare Library. It's so nice to be here in a place that feels so haunted. Speaking of which, let's jump into a story. I'd like for us all to imagine that we are in a room very much like this, but a little different. This room is a part of an ancient, ruined temple. You look around and you can see crumbling stone walls. The stone floor has shoots of weeds growing up out of them and vines wrapping themselves around those crumbled walls. Evidence of nature's inevitable reclamation. And you're here with a group of people that you know. A few companions that have traveled with you and fought by your side. Together with these companions, you've witnessed terrible sorcery. You have felled, as if on cue. Some of that sorcery lingers in the air. As the light spell that one of your companions have cast goes dim and then illuminates the room once again. You've felled impossible foes. You've witnessed terrible sorcery and you've forged a bond held together by your common cause to protect everything that you care about from some terrible evil. I'm assuming all of you have, this is familiar. Like, what I just did must be familiar to the storytellers that are in the room. How many of you play or have played in some kind of tabletop role-playing game? It's pretty much everybody. Is there anybody here that has not at all? Are you, a few of you? Welcome. Welcome to the fold. One of us. I want to welcome you all, adventurers, those old and new, to this form of storytelling, because that's what it is. And it is one of my favorite types of storytelling, because it's, all you need is a couple of friends in a living room and an imagination. And then you can really cut loose and experience a wild world that is only limited by what your collective imaginations can do. And games like Dungeons and Dragons, or Vampire the Masquerade, if there's anybody here that likes that, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, anybody? Really? Wow, that's awesome. That was like one of the first role-play games that I've ever played. I started with Dungeons and Dragons, and then we explored Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which was a impossibly hard game. Impossibly hard. I don't even know if I need this anymore, but look, we're all storytellers here, and we need you, especially now. What this kind of storytelling does, we know, those of you that have played, it is an empathy-generating factory. It is an invitation to gather around a table and engage in stories that help us build connection, help us learn about what we can become, and perhaps learn about who we might have been. storytelling that's very much like what our ancestors might have done. And I think here at the Shakespeare Library, we understand the value of storytelling. We go to the theater, we go and watch TV shows and movies, but what makes tabletop role-playing storytelling different is that when you're out at the theater, when you are watching a TV show, the majority of us are passive observers. We're the audience. And we can still understand the value of storytelling, the value of being taken on a ride. But there's something leagues beyond that when you get to step into the role. Traditionally, it's relegated to a chosen few people that get to explore that. But being able to step into what it means to be heroic is my favorite thing about this form of storytelling, and that we can do it without having to have an audience there, because we are the audience. We are each other's audience. So, we are part of a long lineage of storytelling people. And I think it's really imperative that we own that we allow that to be a part of our humanity and our ritual, it's in our DNA. I can go on and on and on about that, and if I do, then I will probably get incredibly emotional, thinking about how we gather around a table like how our ancestors perhaps would gather around a campfire or inside a temple or some sacred place, and that we are connecting to this lineage. And hopefully not relinquishing it. I've gone to a number of conventions and I've gotten to meet people like this, and I'm struck with what people have to say about what they've seen me on, and it's incredibly moving, and it makes me very proud of being able to do that in the way that I can. And then lately, I've started to hear something that I think makes me pause. Occasionally I'll meet somebody that says, oh, I have never tried to play a game like that, to tell a story like that, because I could never do it like how you actors do it. And it makes my heart break. I started playing tabletop games consistently when I was 16, and have pretty much never stopped. And the first time I heard someone say that to me, my response was, oh, but you absolutely can. Like you are in your spirit, in your being, a storyteller that is just waiting to burst out. And imagine what you might have to say when you embody what it means to have to face down a dragon or an evil sorcerer, or I mean, it is like the part of our inner child that wants to like come out, but it's also an invitation to play pretend in that fantasy world with the sophistication and the depth and the integrity and the focus that an adult can bring. And it's magic. And so when I heard that, all I wanted to do was to say, hey, wait, no, there is a place for you here. There's a place for everybody at this table. That is the point. That is the point of this. And it made me think, 16-year-old me would probably have that same apprehension. 16-year-old me in this day, with everything that we have access to, would watch storytellers like these professional actors, and I know I would look at that and I would say I couldn't do it, and then I wouldn't even bother. And that to me is a tragedy. I remember my first group. I remember how I joined my first group. I grew up in Riverside, California, which I know there's at least one person. Really? Oh my gosh! Really? Wow! Well then, I got a story that's gonna resonate, maybe. So, where I grew up, I went to Norte Vista High School. I don't know if you know that much, where I grew up, there were a lot of gangs, and there was a lot of Riverside were Breaking Bad. You know the TV show Breaking Bad? It was meant to take place in Riverside, California, and then because they didn't want to shoot it in California, they moved it to New Mexico. But the first time I saw somebody shoot heroin, I was 15. And I'll never forget the way I saw them sitting on the couch, and it was my friend's aunt, and I saw a needle go up and then kind of disappear because the back of the couch covered that part. Except the angle that I saw it, I did see a little bit of the top of the needle, and then I don't really remember the rest, but I just saw them kind of slump. And I just went to my friend. I was like, yeah, I was 15. And I just said, I think your aunt is doing drugs. And nothing she went to go check on her, and everything was fine. It wasn't an overdose, so I guess everything was fine. But my friends growing up, which I will never, I hold them in such a special place. They were some of the most amazing people. And I'm not going to get emotional. I remember how incredibly vibrant their imaginations were. I remember how kind they were. I remember how loyal they were. And I remember how I got invited to join the drama club and how I needed an easy A, and I joined because my friend that invited me told me that it was an easy A, and how the moment I did that was the moment that I met my first Dungeons and Dragons group, and then my life went down a completely different path. My neighborhood friends continued to first they became a tagger crew. Well, first they became a party crew, then they became a tagger crew, and then one day when I was walking to school, because they didn't want me to feel left out, they had tagged up a wall with their, all their gang names, and then they included my name because I didn't want a gang name, and they wanted me to have one because they wanted me to feel included. And I said, no, I don't want one. And so they tagged my first name and last name. And then they went to see me later on that night, and they thought I would be so pleased, and I was not. And then they went and they covered my last name but kept my first name. And these were the friends I grew up with. And these are the friends that when we were walking from one of my friend's houses to another friend's house, cops pulled us over, and my friend just got out of juvie, and he knew the drill, so he went and put his hands on the hood of the car because he knew to do that. I didn't know. I was shaking, and I followed him, and then the cops searched us and were really rough, and I kind of yelped, and the cops said that if he wanted to, he can rip off my balls. And I got super scared, and I said, but I'm in AP classes in response. And these are my friends. And my friend then stood up for me against the cop. And he's like, leave him alone, he's a good kid. But then, as I say that right now, I hear how, as he said that, he was willing to admit that maybe he was a bad kid. So I spent less time with them as I played Dungeons and Dragons with the group that I met in the drama club. And because I am such a through and through nerd, I kept on trying to get them to play with me. And they would humor me when we would be hanging out. They would let me kind of make up a story. They would be like, we would go on hikes near the Santa Ana River bottom in Riverside, and they would endure me narrating an adventure that we were on. And some like some crystal of who knows what power that we were going to go find, and as time went on, I had less time for them. And on one particular night, after a play that we put on, I was meant to go play Dungeons and Dragons with my home game group, and my friend Vanessa, I had kind of dragged her into the play, and to this day she says that she's credited with the first person to ever do my stage makeup because she helped me with that. Our friends rolled up to the high school and gave us a little bit of a hard time because we haven't been hanging out with them as much, and we were on the fence, and she decided, okay, I'm gonna go hang out with you instead of like doing whatever else I was up to, which was play Dungeons and Dragons. And I was on the fence, and I decided to play with my friends instead of going with them. Hey, welcome, come on in. Just in time for like a really intense part of the story, just so you know. So my friend Vanessa goes with my neighborhood friends, and I'm hanging out with my Dungeons and Dragons friends. And that's the night that group of friends in their car went to, those of us from Riverside know Casablanca. They ended up in Casablanca, and they ended up throwing gang signs at the wrong people, and their car ended up getting shot up. And my friend Vanessa got shot in the back of the head. And she survived because she was wearing a hair clip, and the bullet hit, like the hair clip plus like 10, like, because it definitely had to have magical properties. The bullet hit the metal part of the hair clip and ricocheted just enough so it didn't go into her head. But when news came to me, all we knew is they got shot up, a bullet hit her, and they were in the hospital, and no one knew what was happening. And, well, this is the weird part of the story. She ended up being okay, and when we reconvened, she showed me the staples that she had in her head, and I said, don't let them throw out the staples, I want them. And then she gave me the staples that were in her head. I was not planning on sharing that part of the story. I was not. But it's what happened. And so that night has stayed with me. In fact, I was talking to Vanessa. I went to all my high school dances with her, and she has the same birthday as my mom. And I checked in with her and I said, hey, are you okay if I tell the story? Because I've never actually told it publicly like this ever. But and she said, of course. And we caught up some, and we just remembered how that was such a turning point for so many of us, but not enough of us. Not enough of us. And I already had another outlet, and it's shaped my life. A lot of the friends that I've made because I've shared the table with them. I know what it's like to be in a room on an adventure with people that you would never maybe hang out with each other out in the world because you come from different parts of the world, or just different groups or different types or whatever. But here around the table, we're the party of heroes. And we're working together to protect what matters. And those bonds and those barriers that you break, and the unleashing of the imagination. I wouldn't be who I was today if it wasn't for that. But also, what if I didn't have that? And what if I had gone in that car? And what if, yeah, of course, I think, what if the bullet hit me? My hair's not long enough for a claw hair clip. Or I know, because I was the little guy, they would have shoved us in the middle seat. And what if that had pushed her over 6 inches? And what if the claw wouldn't have helped protect the bullet that was going to enter her head? So I think of that moment. It's with me all the time. And recently I started to think of it in a different way. I'm careful when I tell the story of my friends that I grew up with because I'm really sensitive to mischaracterizing them. They were some of the most amazing people I have ever met, as I was saying earlier. And they had imaginations just like I did. And it wasn't until recently that I realized that they were playing pretend just like I was. Their fantasy, they were LARPing. A kind of hero of the streets. And the sort of bonds that happen with that. LARPing is live action role playing for like the maybe 1 person or 2 people here that might not know that. But you know, they were, I remember how we would talk about the gang that they were when they wanted to start it. And it was the party crew turned tagger crew turned getting sucked into a gang where they were dealing drugs and shooting people and getting shot at. And I firmly believe that although...
Sorry, that's the rabies.
That's totally fine. It's just haunted. It's just haunted. We're with you. You're welcome here. You got something to say? So there's a place for you at the table too. And so I just keep wondering, what if what we do, what I got to do, what if that were more accessible? What if it were easier to introduce that to more people from the neighborhood that I came from? Not all of them, but maybe some of them, maybe another 1 or 2 or 3 would have gone down a different path. And so when I go to a convention and I hear someone tell me that, I'm sorry, I would never even bother trying, it makes me sad. So, I'm not here trying to tell a sad story. I promise, because the wisdom we acquire is meant to, it's not meant to be easy. As we reflect upon the story that is our origin story, it's meant to help illuminate. It's not meant to hold you prisoner with regret. It's meant to illuminate with hope what another future might have been like. And it gives you the opportunity in the present to try to fight and shape and aim for that future, maybe at least for the next generation or the next group. And I do believe that had they just had access to another avenue to activate their imagination, I think their story would have been very different. I've cut to what the adult life that many of them went down. A lot of them had found their way out of that troubled life, thankfully, but a lot of them didn't. Some of those friends of mine are in prison. Some of them are no longer around, overdosed on drugs eventually, had kids that were taken away by Child Protection Services. But who they were back then remains the same. And I believe who they were at their core and the potential that they had and the imagination that they had is what I hold on to. Because what I want to offer you all is storytellers, players, is a reminder of the power of what we do. The potential that it can take someone and pull them into perhaps another possibility. That there truly is a seat for everybody at the table. So this is kind of my call to arms. And if that's what it is, then our imaginations are our swords, and we each other are our shields. There's a place for every one of us. And if you find someone who feels that there isn't a place for them, then my call is for you to just simply tell them, of course there is. And that's all I want to say.